please notice that I did not appeal to God as the cause of the resurrection. I'm not going to appeal or presuppose God, but likewise, I'm not going to a priori exclude the possibility either.
你是想说有上帝？
无论有没有，可是他没给出确实的证据。
Yes, faith is required for it. Even if we conclude Jesus rose from the dead, you'd have to say, well, how do we know God did it? How do we know it wasn't an alien performing an experiment or just trying to get his PhD in a parallel universe? He had to come and deceive people to thinking that he was God.
Do you think they're in contact with aliens?
You don't need to believe in Santa Claus to believe people give gifts on Christmas.
Do you believe in Santa Claus?
Ho, ho, ho.
So right now, I don't believe that there are any intelligent aliens that have visited the Earth.
So, we're going to defeat the aliens?
Well, of course it sounds stupid when you say it like that.
Welcome to Paulogia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. Warning that this episode has very minor spoilers for the Netflix sci-fi series 3 Body Problem, though nothing that wasn't already revealed in the trailers. Also warning that this episode has potentially major spoilers for the Licona Bart Ehrman resurrection debate that took place in 2022. If you haven't seen that already, this is probably a good time to correct it by going to tinyurl.com/BartDebate. And if the prospect of a 6-hour debate between these titans isn't enough, just last week, I recorded a brand new 2-year retrospective with Dr. Ehrman, looking back at the debate and new advances in resurrection scholarship since then.
That, 90% of scholars say this, and therefore it's right or something. It's got nothing to do with it. I mean, before Newton, what did 90% of scholars say about why rocks fell to the earth when you dropped them? They didn't have a theory of gravity yet. And so the fact they said something didn't make it right. And so I don't think consensus is a good way to argue. It is worth noting, though, because if you disagree with consensus, then you need to have a good argument.
And that's exclusive bonus material. So tap on the link in the description for more. With miserable weather here, I spent my Easter weekend binging resurrection debates and 3 Body Problem, which created an interesting juxtaposition between the show and the wild examples from pro-resurrection Christian scholar Dr. Mike Licona and his insistence that historians can evaluate miracles.
Let's say that a comet's about ready to hit the moon. It hits the moon, and as the lunar dust settles, there is a message written on the moon's surface that says Jesus is Lord, and it's written in Hebrew and in Greek. Now, here's what a scientist would do. They would say, what an extraordinary event. Of course, I have no natural explanation for it, and it would certainly seem to require divine intervention. However, as a scientist, I have no ability, no mechanism for identifying divine causation.
In the first episode of 3 Body Problem, protagonist Dr. Augie Salazar is a scientist looking for explanations about mysterious visions that are haunting her.
Tomorrow, at midnight, at exactly midnight, go outside and look up at the sky. Does the universe ever winked at you?
Like any good experimental scientist would, Augie establishes a control group.
No confirmation bias. Just watch and let me know what you observe, if you observe anything. Science, dude, that's why you're here.
Midnight comes, and things get crazy.
I observed the universe winking.
How can it be happening?
This is not dissimilar to Licona's moonwriting scenario, right? All the stars in the universe are flickering in unison, and in a pattern that is meaningful to the viewer. And unlike a 2,000-year-old miracle claim, the world need not take Augie at her word. There's empirical evidence, like video recordings from around the world, that verify the event, just as we would expect for Mike's hypothetical, assuming it's taking place in our modern world. Mike correctly anticipates scientific acknowledgement, but misses the boat on scientific attribution.
Certainly, while recognizing the occurrence of the event, I have to say that I can't identify the cause. But here's what it wouldn't do. The scientist wouldn't say, wow, what an extraordinary event. I have no natural explanation. It requires a divine causation.
If tonight the star started flickering in Morse code, we might not immediately have a natural explanation. But the answer, I don't know yet, doesn't yield to divine causation. Three-body problem knows scientists better than Mike does.
The world saw it happen.
Sure, everyone on Earth. But you know who didn't see it? Webb, Hubble, Chaos. None of the satellites saw it. You know why?
Why?
Because it never happened. It was a deep fake.
In the show, they didn't simply trust testimony or their own eyes, even though it was the entire world viewing it. Referencing instruments off-world, they could confirm this was a manufactured deception rather than the miracle Mike's ilk jumped to. And of course, these scientists are intrigued by an I don't know question.
But I don't have the tools to identify divine causation. So that would require God. I can't write on this for my peers. And so I'm sorry, I can't even acknowledge the event itself. Well, as ridiculous as that sounds, that is exactly the position that Bart has taken when it comes to miracles.
So many Christians have complained to me when I've said that if God appeared before me, I'd at least consider the possibility that I was mistaken or misattributing what I'm experiencing. They scoff at my skepticism, but I'm equally aghast at anyone who immediately accept strange experiences as veridical and attribute the experience to a supernatural entity that they cannot justify. Have some intellectual humility, people. The first answer should be, I don't know. I don't want to speak for Dr. Ehrman, but Mike's narrative says nothing about my views on historical investigation into miracles. Of course, a historian can look into them. Historians far in the future could investigate a hypothetical modern-day blinking sky or dust writing on the moon, and they'd be fortunate enough to have empirical evidence to accompany any testimony. But that's the problem with any ancient miracle claim, where the evidence is only testimony. It's always going to be more likely that the testimony is lying or mistaken than that a miracle has occurred. That has nothing to do with whether miracles are possible or not, but people lie every day. People are mistaken every day. People do not witness miracles every day. Testimony alone cannot establish a miracle as the most likely explanation. Mike seems to understand this at some level, because in the debate he moved on to another example.
Let's suppose that I'm home and my wife comes in the door just from the store and she's crying and she says, whoa, you know, I was just at the mall and I just saw a spaceship and there was this horrendous looking alien that came out and all these cars started to take off and they were crashing into one another and they ran over a few people and I don't know what's going to happen here. Well, now Debbie and I just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary earlier this week. I've known her for like a year and a half longer than that we've dated. So I know when she's telling what she thinks is true. Would that be enough to convince me? I don't know.
Lots to unpack there. Starting with, she's telling what she thinks is true. Mike's already acknowledging the possibility that his wife, the person he trusts most, might be sincerely mistaken. So why would that not be on the table for stories from strangers from thousands of years ago? They couldn't be mistaken? Second, Mike is going to carry on about more testimony, but he threw in opportunity for empirical corroboration by having the spaceship crashing into things. The damage could absolutely be investigated to see if it's consistent with the spaceship story. If it matches, we're not limited to testimony, so it's no longer analogous to our evidence for the resurrection.
But let's say there are two other neighbors that came to our door and they're hysterical because they said they've seen aliens. You know, wow, well, I'm getting mounting evidence.
This is potentially valuable if we can rule out collusion between them. Again, the Gospels are all literarily dependent on each other, and even Paul's comments stem from decades of common oral tradition.
And then let's suppose we turn the television on and every station has videos of these alien sightings around the world.
Okay, well, video evidence is no longer testimony, so Mike's not even trying to make this similar.
Well, now I have to change my view. I'd have to say, well, even though I thought it was scientifically impossible, here it is.
I might change my mind too, because this hypothetical isn't just testimony. Again, so Christians in the back can hear. It's not that sufficient evidence for a miracle is impossible. It's that testimony evidence alone won't be enough to cross the threshold of convincing. Dr. Ehrman expressed frustration about these hypotheticals that aren't analogies.
The two examples he called hypothetical situations. The first hypothetical situation was if a UFO invaded and his wife told him that she saw it, and then he saw it on TV and he saw it reported.
Millions of people have taken to the streets after the revelation that an alien race known as the Santi are headed towards Earth.
And that wouldn't be amazing evidence because, that'd just be TV and his wife talking. Okay, the reason this is a hypothetical piece of hypothetical is because he doesn't have any actual situations. Yes, if you start picking hypotheticals, then you can just say anything. Oh, well, but would it be hypothetical if I said, and you come up with the UFO invaders?
Some people are worshipping the aliens. That's something.
But not just UFO invaders. He had another thing at the end. Let me see. Yeah, when he explained about how when a comet hit the moon and they discovered a writing talking about Jesus, how scientists wouldn't be able to talk about that. Well, you will have noticed that sort of thing has never happened. The reason he has to have a hypothetical is precisely because that sort of thing doesn't happen. If he wants to say you don't need amazing evidence for miracles, then okay, then give me the evidence that's not amazing.
Exactly. Stop proposing scenarios and start providing evidence. Or propose scenarios that match. Would you believe in aliens if someone who never met the aliens had a vision of them several years after they left? What if this guy said that his friends told him that 500 people they don't know the names of saw the aliens? What if we had an anonymous document that described the aliens having breakfast with 11 people? Do you believe in the aliens now?
Oh, come on, this is fucking mental. She's talking about aliens.
No, I wouldn't either. As long as resurrection evidence is limited to testimony, it's not even first-hand testimony. Another problem for another show. Anyway, as long as resurrection evidence is limited to testimony, it's going to be more likely to be lying or mistaken. That's just the way things are. If you want to see Mike and Bart's full 6-hour debate for yourself, head over to tinyurl.com/BartDebate, and I'll see you over there. Until next time, later.